Hey folks, thanks for joining. We're gonna get started in a couple seconds here. Really excited to go through the content that we have today. If you're just dialing in and you'd like to participate in the chat, please make sure that on the community page for the town hall, that you click the going button. Once you do that, that will unlock chat. We're gonna try and keep it as collaborative and conversational as possible during this. So if you have questions, I'll be watching and monitoring the chat as well as the rest of the Vercel team. So we'll try to address your questions as we go. But with that said, we'll get started in a couple seconds here. All right, see some people filtering in here. All right, we're gonna kick off. We have plenty of content to get through. Want to make sure we leave time at the end for questions as well. But yeah, super excited to go through our partnerships technical town hall. We have, like I mentioned, a bunch of topics. We're going to talk about AI cloud, edge network, and firewall. And then I'm going to go through a set of releases that we've had, both on the core Vercel platform as well as v0.app. For those of you that haven't met me before or that I haven't worked with, my name is Alex Hawley. I am the Senior Manager of Partner Solutions Engineering at Vercel. I've been at Vercel for approaching 3 years, and basically I work technically with all of our partners to help build great solutions for our joint customers, which includes running sessions like today to make sure you all know kind of the latest features that we're releasing, but also hopefully get in the weeds with you on technical solutions and help enable you on like best practices as well as new tools that you can use to build your web apps. So for the agenda for this town hall, we're going to hit on a bunch of different things. First, I'm going to talk about the AI cloud, which is the new positioning that Vercel has, which we announced at Ship a couple months back. So I'm going to go through what that means, how we got there, and then also talk about the products that the AI cloud consists of. After that, I'm going to talk about Vercel, Edge Network, and Firewall. I receive quite a few questions around the features, the functionality of both, but also whether or not it's recommended to bring a third-party CDN or a separate web application firewall product to your solution. And there's a bunch of best practices that I want to pass along. And then towards the tail end of the talk, there's Vercel is always shipping, and we have a lot of releases in our changelog. So I don't have time to go through every single thing that we've done since the last town hall, but I wanted to take some time and go through some of the latest releases that I think are most relevant for your engineering teams, and then also talk about V0, which is also shipping every single day. So I'm gonna do a quick demo of V0, show some of the new features off, and then after that, we'll move to a Q&A. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them live. But again, if you have questions as we go, please feel free, drop them in the chat. We have folks that are monitoring, including myself, so we can certainly keep it conversational. So, very first thing I want to talk about is one, I want to extend a thank you to everyone that came to Vercel Ship back in June. It was great catching up with many of you in person, but also thanks to everyone that attended virtually or through one of our watch parties. We announced a lot of things at Ship, and perhaps the biggest ship that we shipped was the AI Cloud, which is a new set of products that Vercel is providing that's going to make it really easy for teams to build AI native and agentic experiences on the web. So the first thing that I wanted to go through is talk about the transition that Vercel is having towards AI cloud. And in thinking about the story here that Vercel has, what was really helpful for me to help frame this to myself was thinking about Vercel in a timeline over the last 6 or 7 years. And if there's one thing that's consistent on the web, it's that it evolves and that it shifts. And if we look back maybe 6 years ago, I think we could acknowledge that there was probably an opinion that websites should probably err on the side of being static. That way, they're very fast. They're very safe. But then we saw that there was a transition where users, customers, really preferred more kind of personalized, dynamic experiences online. They wanted to have personalized content. They wanted to have personalized recommendations. And doing that in a static architecture is not always possible. So Vercel built the front end cloud to cater to that use case. If you want to build a dynamic application and you want to have the code primitives, you want to have the infrastructure products and primitives, so you can reliably build and deploy that application and have it be dynamic, but not compromise on speed, which is going to be very important, obviously, for SEO and conversion, and all these other things. So that was the framing around front end cloud. Now, I think we can all acknowledge that there's another shift going on, which is the shift towards an agentic web. So on the foundation of dynamic, these agentic expectations are coming from users where they want to interface with an agent. They want to ask questions, have a conversation, and receive what they need, what they want to have. So in supporting agentic and AI workloads, we need a new set of products. There's new architectures, both at the code level and at the infrastructure level. So that's the framing around AI cloud. That's why Vercel is shifting towards AI cloud and why now. Um, Hence, Vercel is the AI cloud that delivers the developer experience tools and the infrastructure so that your teams have everything that they need to build, scale, and secure intelligent apps and agents. And I'll add that are very fast. In thinking about Vercel, even prior to my time at Vercel, I really liked it because it was an end-to-end platform for applications. When I was building a solution for a client or a customer, it was always worth a lot to me if I could come with a preference on that solution before work started, so that my engineers could get started right away on focusing on the business requirements and making the experience great. So that still very much remains the case here. And when I think about the end-to-end platform for applications and AI apps, I'm really thinking of these three pillars, if you want to think of them that way. First, Vercel is going to provide globally dynamic hosting. So this was very prevalent before for the front end cloud, and it's going to become more relevant now for the AI cloud. You're going to want to ship dynamic applications that are AI native online. They need to be globally available. They need to be globally secure, and Vercel has everything that you need there. I'll talk more at length around the edge network and firewall, which I think we'll hit on this more in a few minutes. But this is like the first core pillar that I'd say for the AI cloud. Next, more than ever before, we're moving at a breakneck speed with AI adoption and how we're building the web for these new experiences. So it's important that that your teams are equipped to iterate quickly and also have a lot of agility. So when I think of Vercel's developer experience platform and tools like preview deployments, preview comments, the Vercel toolbar, feature flags, these are all things that you can arm your team with or use yourself to build quickly and adjust accordingly when you get feedback from users or you have new best practices that you want to build. And then the last piece, certainly not least, is security. So security, very, very important, obviously. Even more important now with AI workloads. You want to protect new endpoints. You may have particularly low margin infrastructure that you need to think about if you're reaching out to an LLM that's running for a long time. So you want to make sure that only the right people are accessing those. So Vercel has you covered with a secure by default posture. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes here some new products that you can use to make sure that your sites remain secure. So this is a snapshot of the new products that we announced at Ship. I'm going to go in detail through each one. Some of these are very much obviously catered towards AI, hence they're prefaced by AI. And some of these have existed before, but we've enhanced them to be even better for any web application, but specifically for AI workloads. Features like or products like Fluid Compute, hopefully you've been using, is great for making sure you're running fast sites, but also efficiently, so your cost isn't out of control. And we're going to talk more about firewall a little bit later on how it can protect you and all the different layers that Vercel provides and tools so that you can make sure that only the right people are accessing your application. So drilling in first to Fluid Compute. At the last town hall, I covered Fluid Compute because we had just released it, and it's a fantastic product, and it remains the best way to probably have your application hosted on Vercel. But we've made some changes and that we announced at Ship that I want to cover. So first, as a refresher, Fluid Compute is all about maximizing compute time and minimizing idle time. Conventionally, if you had a serverless function and you were and you were using it to host an application, a request would come in, that serverless function would be invoked. It would do some work, but then probably do something else based on the response from another service, like a database, CMS, econ platform. And during that time, that idle time, you're paying for that. So Fluid Compute was released with this concept of in-function concurrency, which basically lets you use one function to handle multiple requests and repurpose that idle time. So a very efficient way for you to have your infrastructure provisioned. Now we announced that you will only be charged for your active CPU time. Hence, I think it's called active CPU pricing. So regardless of what your concurrency is, how many users you have coming to your site, if you have idle time, you're not paying for it. So this is great for an AI product or experience that you're building where you're waiting perhaps for a long time for an agent to respond. You're not paying for that function to stick around and just wait. But also extremely relevant for workloads where you just don't want to pay for idle time, regardless of if you're connecting to an AI or you're connecting to a database. So this is enabled by default in all new Vercel projects. You can take advantage of it today. If you have an older project, I highly recommend going into your project settings and flipping it on to bring down your cost. Next, another product you can use today is Bot ID. So Bot ID is invisible bot filtering. It's essentially a invisible CAPTCHA for your critical routes and pages like logins, checkouts, any AI endpoint. And you can run and integrate bot ID through your application code through just one line if you'd like. And you can run in a couple different modes. The first mode is a basic mode, which basically just makes sure that the session is a valid browser session. But if you want to have a deeper analysis, you can flip into deep analysis mode. And this is powered by our partner Casada, which is going to provide even more advanced protection, and but still give you a very simple yes or no response on whether it's a bot or a human. So very easy to operate with in the SDK. And deep analysis is very robust. So it uses machine learning as well as aggregates thousands of data points that Casada has collected across signals that indicate if the request is a bot versus a human, and is very good about making sure that only bots are getting to your site. So this is going to be critical for protecting any automated attacks or if unwanted scraping or fraud that's happening on your site. Next is the AI SDK 5. So the AI SDK has been out for quite a while. If you haven't worked with it, just on a side to 5, the AI SDK is just an amazing SDK. It's just a pleasure to work in. I recommend folks check it out just for the sake that it's fun to work in. If you're building an app or an agent, it's just a pleasant experience and can really get the wheels turning on what you can build with AI. But we have recently released AI SDK 5. This is a unified provider for APIs. It always has been. It's basically a way for you to connect to OpenAI, Anthropic, Hugging Face, and rather than changing your code to interact with different models, if you want to test a different model, you can just swap one single string to a different model, and then you're now using that other LLM. So it's really, really great for making sure you have an agnostic approach to your AI applications, and then quickly swap to different LLMs if you want to see if there's an LLM that gives you better results for your business requirements. On top of that, there's also a bunch of utilities and tools that you can use for building an agent experience really quickly. And with 5, we've released a slew of new enhancements to the SDK, which will make this even better. First, we've improved type safety across the board, and I've also redesigned the chat interface so that we can separate now UI messages from model messages, basically what you see versus what you send to an LLM, to make it a little bit cleaner on how you orchestrate that sequence. And now we have support for server sent events and plenty more to dig into on the chat architecture. We've added more primitives around an agentic loop and the control that you can have over that. So an agent calling itself to perform actions. There's going to be primitives like stop when and prepare step, which is going to help you write code and logic that your agent should perform, as well as an agent class, so that you can actually delegate work in the AI SDK to like sub agents or adjacent agents. We've improved tool invocation, so with more type safety as well as more explicit error states, and we support way more than Next.js. I know usually I'm assuming if you've watched these before, you're assuming we mostly talk about Next.js, but we have great support with the AI SDK for Vue, Svelte, and Angular. So it's a very great application, regardless of where you're using it, or if you're using it on backend workloads. Next is the AI gateway, which really goes hand in hand with the AI SDK. So the AI gateway is a way for you to connect to any of the AI vendors and LLM vendors and use any model. So rather than going to OpenAI, setting up an account, getting your API key, perhaps going to Anthropic and doing the same, and then kind of wrangling those keys based on what you want to test, just connect to the AI gateway on Vercel, and you have automatic availability to all the providers and all the models. And then on top of that, there's a slew of other features that make this kind of a no-brainer. On top of the unified API to connect to these services, you'll have built-in fallback. So if a service goes down or you want to use a different one, you can switch immediately to a different provider or LLM. Load balancing is built in. You can track your usage across these providers very easily. And if you do have keys that you want to manage, you can bring those with you. And then one question that I've received from several partners that I should also include is like, we don't charge a markup on this. You're paying the same cost that you would if you went straight to the provider. So it's a really, really great DX of the AI gateway coupled with the AI SDK. Definitely recommend checking it out. And then this is the last item before we transition into the edge network and firewall topic. But we have now Vercel Sandbox in public beta. So Sandbox is a way for you to run untrusted code by AI agents in a isolated environment that you can tear down when you're done. And you only grant access to the things it absolutely needs. So there's no risk of this AI writing code that then just causes damage across your infrastructure or across your application. You can run Node.js and Python in there. This is going to be a great tool if you're building a dynamic experience or creating tools where you're generating code on the fly and you want to test that code in isolation. So there's a lot more to the announcement and the AI cloud in general. I'm hitting just kind of the main notes that I think are most relevant, but I definitely recommend you all check out the AI cloud blog post that Dan wrote, which goes through the platform and the workloads that we're hoping to serve from it, including a QR code here as well for you to snap if you'd like to take a look. And also, I wouldn't put if you're using the QR code and you want to see these resources, I mean, you can also go to vercel.com/blog. There's going to be plenty more QR codes as we go throughout this presentation. So you might also just want to keep your camera handy. All right. So moving on, let's talk about the edge network and firewall. Again, we receive a lot of questions from partners and engineers on what is the edge network? How does it function? Same with the firewall. Should we not bring a third party CDN, or hey, I want to just use Vercel full stack. I don't want to be using the CDN that maybe we've inherited. Can you help explain to me kind of the benefits of Vercel's edge network and everything else? So I prepped some content here that I think will shed some light on it. And then also we have some really, really fantastic technical blogs that you can drill into on what the edge network actually consists of when a request comes in, which I'll include at the end here. So first, I want to address the question up front. I received it twice this week. Is what is Vercel's recommendation for a third party CDN? So Vercel is very opinionated on this. There really isn't a need to bring a third party CDN or a separate WAF to your Vercel solution. And there's a slew of different reasons for this. And a lot of these reasons that I'll go through is backed by data and feedback that we've received from customers. First, I think, probably um, there's the most obvious reason, which is cost effectiveness. Two CDNs, Vercel CDN and another CDN, it's going to cost more than just Vercel CDN. And then, in fact, it's actually worse than that when you have a third-party CDN because you have two, and you're basically degrading the value of Vercel CDN because you're preventing it perhaps from working optimally on cache busting and getting all the configuration set up for you with zero config, as well as some of the other negatives that we'll see in the bullets below. You really do degrade what you're capturing from Vercel. So if you're going to be uh, um, efficient on cost, I would stick to just Vercel. Next, there's reliability. So, there was a quote from one of our tech leaders recently that made me laugh, but it also is very effective. Which is, if you bring another CDN to Vercel, and that has 99.99% uptime, and Vercel has 99.99% uptime. If you multiply those two together, it's not 99.99% uptime. You've added a, a an additional failure point in your solution. And getting a little bit more granular on that, if you have another point there, you have one configuration that you have to do, which you may get wrong. If there's an issue, a great thing about just Vercel as a standalone CDN and controlling the full stack is that you have observability from the moment that request hits the network all the way to when it goes to origin and hits a serverless function. So you have the full visibility of the issue. If there is one there, you have the firewall to perhaps deny that user, or logging to troubleshoot and see the performance of that request. But if you add a CDN in front of that, that piece is going to be unknown to Vercel and perhaps to your team that's mitigating an issue, and certainly to Vercel, which may be auto mitigating some of these issues when they do arise. So again, reliability generally probably lower with a third party CDN. And in a similar note, maintenance is going to be higher. You probably have an infrastructure team, or you're working with an infrastructure team that's thinking about that other CDN, how to get it to configure properly with Vercel. And we have supported plenty of third-party CDNs being integrated with Vercel, but it is a maintenance burden that we see every single time to set up, make sure that it continues to work. When you add new pages, when you think of new architectures, you're always thinking about that other CDN. So when you ship on Vercel and it's just Vercel, this is all zero config. You can just focus on building your product. And then last but not least is performance. When you have another CDN, you have a extra hop that the request has to take, which comes with a burden or a performance burden. In fact, there's a site that you can go to, is my hostfastjet.vercel.app, where we've aggregated some public data points on performance of Vercel and other hosting providers with and without CDNs. And across the board, if you look at Vercel standalone versus Vercel plus another service, Vercel is going to be faster. So why is it that we put this recommendation forward? Why do we feel confident about Vercel as a standalone solution? These are the main points for the edge network and for Vercel firewall. So first, Vercel's edge network. This is a high performance application delivery network. We have over 100 points of presence across 90 plus cities. We have 19 compute capable edge regions. If you were eagle-eyed earlier in this presentation, you may have noted the 19. We just added a new region, which I'll talk about. But we're continuously improving the edge network to be, globally available and close to where your users are going to be. You can think of the edge network as being this very fault-tolerant private fiber that's like a high-speed highway that your users are going on to get to your business, to get to your application. And built into this highway is a bunch of all these other features that are great to leverage, such as advanced routing middleware. If you've worked in Next.js, you've probably worked with middleware. It's a fantastic primitive to have, where you can run logic to determine where to send a user or where to rewrite a user. You could do A/B testing, personalization. You could do geo blocking. The options are limitless with what you can do there, and it's great because it runs on the edge. It's super performant, and it doesn't add latency to your user, to your customers coming to the site. You could also do regular kind of like routing configuration. I should note, it's not just limited to middleware. When the user does get routed from middleware or the routing in general, they will hit one of these regions and most likely hit a edge cache, which will serve them a cached resource that they're trying to access. This is all configured for you. You don't have to worry about configuring your cache. It's all zero configuration, which I'd say is the underlying kind of like value of a lot of this. You just ship on Vercel and you're done. You have a very high speed application. For the firewall, which is baked into the edge network, it provides both platform and application level protection. The platform-wide firewall, with you having to do nothing, is gonna cover you from layer 3 and layer 4 threats. Vercel prevents more than 1 billion malicious requests weekly without any intervention from our users or customers. And then once a user or a request perhaps gets passed through the first gate, which is the platform firewall, it will then go to the web application firewall, which is the firewall that you more or less can control. You can write your own rules. You have observability on these requests. If you want to deny, challenge, or just log a particular request based on a slew of different metadata like the IP, the location, the fingerprint, the user agent, you can do that in the web application firewall. And then what's really nice, and like this is why a good example of like why full stack is great. One, you can see these requests coming in, like I mentioned, from the edge to the function. But then if you set a web application firewall with a persistent action, like I'm just going to block this IP. I know this IP is no good. I'm just going to persistently deny this. That's going to get synced upstream to the platform-wide firewall. So it's an intelligent system that knows how to operate with your business requirements and also gives you control. And then, like I mentioned, this is going to enable you to write rules based on this metadata on the request, but you can create your own custom rules or flip on existing ones like the OWASP top 10 if you just want to flip that and just never think about it again. All right, so I pulled this diagram because the next slide I have two resources that I encourage you to check out on like the life of a request. And for me, I just love having like a high level diagram that helps my mental model mature on like how a request actually works. How does Vercel's infrastructure work? And this is essentially it. Your request comes in. This globe on the left is a point of presence. When the request goes into Vercel's edge network, it's going to go through a POP. It's going to hit our platform firewall, which I just described. It may or may not get denied, but if it's allowed through that gate, it's going to go to the web application firewall, which your rules will then be applied. You will have control over whether you want to allow or deny that request, and then goes to our routing layer. So this is where edge middleware may run, or you may have a separate routing config to send the user to the right place. When the user is routed to your application, it's very likely that they'll hit the Vercel edge cache at one of these regions across the globe. And then if they don't, they're going to be routed to a Vercel function, probably running Vercel fluid compute, which is this, like as I mentioned earlier, this hyper efficient, performant compute that you can run. So this is the edge network in a nutshell. And then if you want to read more, I strongly encourage you to, again, go to vercel.com/blog. We have a two-part blog post on the life of a Vercel request. And I would go through that. It goes through what I just said in much more detail. That diagram basically gets expanded at every step, and you can see the underlying kind of primitives that are there, which is helpful, I think, just to know how your application works, but also if you're making the case that, hey, we want to use Vercel more, we love shipping on Vercel, it's a great tool to have in your back pocket to pull out. So I'll leave this up on the slides for a second, and I see that we have a question here. So going back to the Vercel sandbox. So Vercel sandbox, is it just for AI written code or simple queries, or is there a way to test it with specific setups and packages? Can we replicate parts of our setups to make the generated code work? Yeah. So I talked about Vercel Sandbox and the scope of like running generated code, but it doesn't have to be for running generated code. If you have like a particular setup that you or app or backend application or app that you want to run, you could definitely configure it that way. We actually have, I'll try to find it. We actually have a template where one of our engineers rebuilt V0 entirely on like Vercel infrastructure. I guess that doesn't sound too surprising because that's V0 in general, but they used all the new products. They used like AI Gateway, they used sandboxes, and they built this whole stack application using Sandbox. So I'll dig up the the template for you, but it doesn't just apply to generated code here. All right, moving on. Let's talk about some of the latest releases. Again, it would take a long time for me to go through everything over the last quarter. So I'm just hitting on some of the high notes and things that I think you might want to be aware of right now. So first, some of you may know, but Node.js 18 is being deprecated on September 1st. If you log into Vercel, you'll probably actually, if you have an application that's running Node 18, you'll probably get a banner at the top saying as much. So I definitely recommend you upgrade your projects if you can. Vercel has a bulk upgrade option that you can do. So single button click, you select your projects, and it will just upgrade to Node.js 22 after a deployment. I'm leaving the QR code up here, which is a link to the changelog of this announcement, but it will also include details for how you can flip this on. But it's very easy to enable. The next the next release is that there's micro front end support is now in public beta. This was actually announced at Ship, but I think it was in private beta. So now this is in public beta. If you haven't used micro front ends, this is basically a way to take a really large application that you have that maybe takes a very long time to build and deploy on Vercel, like 30 minutes. And you can split that into much smaller applications so that each individual piece of your application can maybe ship in like under a minute. So micro front ends is the tool to help you deliver this, and you can now begin testing this and using this on Vercel. The benefits and why this is supported is we now will support navigations between these front ends with prefetching and pre-rendering. So it's a native navigation experience. And then we have tooling built into the platform to also help you test and verify your micro front ends. The Vercel toolbar will give you a set of options for how you can test your individual front ends. And if you want to get started, we have a micro front ends tab that will walk through getting it set up. So I know this has been an outstanding kind of ask from a lot of enterprise partners and customers. So we're definitely looking for feedback. So check out the link here if you want to find out more and get started. The next ship that we had back in July is the V0 platform API. This is super exciting. I've been talking to a lot of technology partners on this one. So this is basically headless V0. If you want to use an API to generate components or leverage V0, this is the way to do it. It's a way to create development sessions. You can post code responses. You can run Next.js applications in the browser. This is we've seen a lot of different use for this already. The biggest like use that we've seen and are engaging with some partners on is you can build your own V0, white labeled for your product or integrated into your existing product or solution to use your context, use the way that you want to build, and just have that embedded into the opinion that V0 has. So you can access this with access to V0. We have the docs are public. You can get started by going through this link. And if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or the Vercel team. All right. So back in June at Ship, this was like the other detail around Fluid Compute that I wanted to get out. So this was enabled by the recent changes that we had with Fluid Compute with active CPU pricing, but we now have higher defaults and limits for Fluid Compute. In the past, we had somewhat short defaults, but now with Hobby Pro and Enterprise, when you're running a function on Vercel on Fluid Compute, it will default to running for 300 seconds. We've also bumped up the hardware spec on these this compute. There's also no longer like a basic CPU instance. So new projects will take advantage of this. Obviously, again, this is just a general pitch for me to say I think you should all probably be looking at Fluid Compute and enabling it. It's going to be better for costs and your performance. So as noted a little bit earlier, we've added a new region, Dubai Vercel region. We're now at 19. This one's specifically stood up to provide global CDN caching. It's closer to the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. You can take advantage of it today. You don't have to do anything. The region's available. If you want to configure your primary region, like you're co-locating your functions with a database that's in that region, you can do so very easily just through the project settings on Vercel. Again, if you want to read out more, we have a link here that you can see. Oh, I have a question here. Can I use micro front ends to use separate frameworks for my app versus landing page? I believe you can. I need to find out how. A lot of the guidance that we have is around Next.js, but I'm sure we're catering to the non Next.js case as well. But let me do some digging and I will find out. Um, yep, I'll get more info on that. Okay, so moving to the V0 releases, um, there's a bunch. I'm gonna just show the product also, which I think will capture kind of the current state. The latest release that we just had is v0.dev is now v0.app, and specifically, it really is the builder for everyone, regardless of if you're an engineer, a project manager, a designer, or someone that just wants to build their own personal software. V0 is for you. If you want to have a like a rich application, full stack app, front end, back end, and you don't care to get into the weeds necessarily on how to implement every little piece, V0 is now more agentic and has a different experience for building very high quality applications. If you haven't checked it out this week, I'm going to do a demo in a few minutes here to kind of showcase like how much it's improved and this new agentic experience. A few things that also we've released that I personally now use a lot. You can queue messages. This was this was a really nice quality of life improvement for me. Usually I get a generation from V0 and like I'll have a bunch of opinions on like I don't like this, I like this, and I have a laundry list of to dos for V0 to do. I need to queue that all in one message and then wait for like an extraordinarily long time to see those. But now you can just look at your generation and go through, make your request for a change, and then as it's generating or thinking, you can go and queue up another response. So a nice quality of life improvement here. And then another quality of life improvement that's been absolutely great is that we announced and released design mode. So design mode, again, catering to me, which is the use case of like I'm picky around a particular area of the design and I want to see it done the right way. You can flip into design mode and then you're given all the tailwind options for changing the styles of that element. This will also allow you to make changes without making a request to V0 and burn through some of your token and credit allotment on V0. So it's great for that reason also. Coupled with design mode, you can also flip straight to the component. Occurs to me now a lot of this is I think what I just found very helpful because I do this all the time where I may I change the style of a component, but maybe what I want to do is not quite captured in just the tailwind classes. I want to change how it functions a little bit. You can use design mode to jump straight to the code, go to right to the element that you want to change and change it as you see fit. So with that, let me jump into V0 and then I'll show you kind of like a new generation that we can see some of these enhancements for. All right, so flipping over to V0, V0.app, I'm going to just create a new application from scratch. I have a snippet prepared. Here we are. I want to build a clean, modern agency marketing landing page. I want the primary color to be blue. We're going to use liquid glass, and I want them to throw some animations in there. We'll see how it does. So I'm going to send this to V0, and like I mentioned, V0 is more agentic than it ever has been before. You're going to see that it's much more thorough in its thought process. It's going to create this design brief where it's thinking about how it approaches it, how it designs it and then even as it generates, it's going to iteratively look at what it's generated and how it can improve it. So the end result is going to be a much higher quality application. And this example that I have here is obviously I'm mostly concerned about seeing the front end application, but you can also do this for generating the back end server side code that maybe you want to have in your full stack app. And then while that's generating, I also want to flip over to related to this, if you've looked at V0 and you see those elements like the thinking, accordions, the interactions there, and you're like, my God, I want to build something like this for my own use case. We just released a new component library, AI Elements, built on top of ShadCN UI that provides all the primitives for building an agentic experience in chat. So A lot of this is the same elements being used in V0. So battle tested, we know they work, great user experience, accessible, and everything else. But you're going to have the fundamental building blocks like actions, branching messages. If you want to render code, you have it there as well as the conversation itself. There's a lot to drill into here. What's like particularly awesome about this is say you generate your app or your component, you just want to render it. We actually have a web preview component that you can just use. So if you want to render your application or your component, we have the primitives for you to build it yourself. All right, let's flip back to V0. All right, this looks pretty good. Um, I'm just looking on the fly to see what we can change to demonstrate these new features. First thing I don't like the subtle like floating animation on the text, so we'll prompt it to change that. And then I don't know. Well, I don't care for the size of the cards here. So let's go ahead and say looks great. Let's remove the floating animation from the hero text. I forget what the actual CSS class is for that animate. We'll send that. And then let's say also decrease the size of the cards of the R services cards. So I get to queue that now. So using that new, just basically lets me throw it in whenever I'm ready to do it. Nice. Yeah, it's removed that animation for the floating title. See, we still have some kind of like micro animations, which is nice. And then let's see if it nails the card sizes here. And then after this, I'll also show design mode if you haven't seen it, which is slick. Yeah, so it's changed the font size a bit here. Um, yeah, let's see here. So let's say, okay, I'm prompting for some of these changes, but I want to make some changes myself. Let's go ahead and look at this text, and I'm just gonna make it a little bit. I'm gonna make it more bold and change the size a bit. Maybe there's something that I want to drill into in more detail. Like I noticed that there's this pulse happening on these stats, which I don't think looks very good. I could prompt V0 to try and fix that, but I could also just right click on this element, go straight to the code, and see where I can change. Actually, it jumped me there, but I'm confused. Projects completed. Okay. Okay, it's here. Yeah, so we see yeah, animate pulse slow. So I could have prompted V0 to remove that, but now that I know it's here, I can just um, delete this all together, save, jump back, and we can see now that animation is gone. So I'm equipped with the tools to prompt my way to get the design that I want, but I also now have a tool, i.e. design mode, that lets me jump straight into it. So I know this is a very kind of perhaps shallow use case of V0, but just wanted to get some of these new features out there as well as encourage you all to take a look at V0.app. The agentic experience in particular, I find is just really, really good. It's building like a very high quality app. Having been demoing this now for over a year, the generations that it's giving me now on the first shot are way, way better than it was before. All right, so we're moving now to like the basically the wrap up. I'm happy to take any more questions that you have. So if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about, please drop them into the chat now. And then if you have other questions or you want to reach out about anything that I talked about or anything else regarding Vercel and partnerships, feel free to hit me up at my email here or at the partner program at partner.programs@vercel.com. And then one last thing, the programs team here is about to release an enablement hub that will collect and provide more enablement material to you to self-serve to your teams. It's going to be through Basewell. It's going to be a portal that you can log into to receive this enablement and basically get started. So what it's going to look like is this is Basewell. I'm logged in as basically a partner. You'll have an onboarding experience you can go through, hence start here. But then once you're in Basewell, you're going to have a library of content, across AI Cloud, V0, resources. Um, I'm biased, but I feel like we have a lot of great Sitecore and Vercel content. So you can definitely go into Basewell, get a kind of a set of quick links that we think are particularly relevant for you, and send that to your teams. So with that, that's the content that I had today. Thanks everyone for joining. Again, if there's any last questions, this is the last moment to throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next one.